Hey there, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This is season 11. We are talking about consulting skills. And today I have kind of an unusual one. Before I get to which one it is, I wanted to introduce a special guest. This is Christopher Carrick, who is a spiritual director and kind of a spiritual life coach, and works with a lot of my clients on making things happen in their business, understanding themselves better, achieving results. And in his own business, he works with people who are spiritual seekers, self-identified, who are experiencing breaks and blockdowns in their lives, and he helps them to find the meaning in those so that they can feel more connected and clear. About right? Good. You can find more about him at ChristopherCarrick.com. In addition, Christopher is also my husband. And so we do spend a lot of time talking about these topics. Today's topic, I think, is a consulting skill. And it is about knowing yourself better and getting the best from yourself. We're going to talk about something called the Hermit Archetype. So, Hermit is something that you can put into action in your business. It's absolutely a practical thing, even though archetypes can feel kind of like ephemeral and like, what does this even mean? This is something that you can do in your business. So before we get further into that, can you, Christopher, just briefly remind us what archetypes are and like why this is even relevant to people in general?
Sure. Well, archetypes are all those different inner aspects that make up you. So we are many different people. We're different with our friends than we are with our family of origin, than we are at work. Archetypes are each of those little aspects inside of us, which may be very different, but they also cluster to create who we are in certain situations. So particularly for an entrepreneur, you're going to find that there's a bunch of critical archetypes that all kind of come together to form the gift that you deliver.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So some of the ones that we'll be talking about this season are going to be the ones that I tend to see, not just in myself, but in many of my clients. And so I think you're going to find that from a personal development standpoint and really understanding yourself and how to get the best work from yourself, that these will be more unusual but interesting episodes. And they are consulting skills. These are ways that you become more skillful in managing yourself. So today, why I wanted to talk about Hermit is because of the benefits that it can bring to you. First, let me just share that I discovered that I had Hermit Archetype, I guess, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or more. Christopher and I were working with the late Jim Curtin, who was a collaborator with Carolyn Mace, who wrote a book called Sacred Contracts. And in the book, she talks about archetypes. And Jim Curtin wrote the appendix where he gave more kind of thorough explanation of what archetypes are and examples of them from film and television, just so people could kind of get a better handle on them. And when I worked with Jim on figuring out what my archetypes were, which is work that Christopher and I now do with my clients, we identified Hermit, and I just had this revelation and epiphany about it, kind of like what my client did that I mentioned. And I realized I was not getting enough alone time. I wasn't making the most of Hermit, and it was something that I needed so much. And it can be tricky to find ways to honor your Hermit if you are in relationships and if you have, like I have, like a big personality and you really are outgoing and you love to connect with people. What you may understand, if this is you, is how much recharging you need. Especially the more outgoing you are, even extroverts, right? We still need to recharge. And so as Jim and I worked on understanding my Hermit, I began to understand myself more. And what I realized was I have to have a certain amount of time where I'm just alone, in silence even. I'm not like puttering around with music. It's a lot about stillness, silence. There can be introspective activities like journaling, meditation. Those things can take place. I will even consider my dog walks that I do. I'm walking a dog out in the forest or in kind of a place there's no people for as far as the eye can see, and it's just a time to connect. Now, is this a spiritual thing? For many people, there is the spiritual connection of going inside and connecting with God or higher power. And I think what's really helpful about that is that they refer to Hermit Archetype as the archetype of inner power. And to me, it's when we go inside and we access those pieces of ourselves that connect us to something more. So I would call it about centering and being really able to focus, recharging. And then you had some ideas about emotional well-being, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the part of you that lights the darkness of your interior space. So you spend a ton of time, especially as an entrepreneur, in paying attention to the outer world and your external experience and your deliverables and what you're trying to create. And this is the archetype that balances that out, that says you also have to spend time in self-reflection. And so when those things in the internal space don't get honored, they start to bleed out into the exterior. So a lot of the times it'll show up as problems in your outer world. So it's like if you attend to your internal space, you'll have less problems in your external space, and you'll also find answers to results that you're looking for in the external world. So like for instance, emotional well-being is one. It's just spending that time saying, how do I feel? You know, if I'm engaged and I'm busy, I don't necessarily take the time to recognize, I'm not able to notice a lot of what's going on. So knowing how you're doing can take, requires taking time out to check. Also, discovering a sense of peace, getting away from the busyness. All that busyness needs to be balanced by not being busy. It gives you a chance to reflect and plan your day, or reflect on how your day went. So to feel more organized. Otherwise, people will describe this sense of like, what's next? And I have to keep things in my head, and I'm not sure. And so it produces a lot of anxiety about, did I get everything done? Am I on top of everything there is to do? So you're able to check in and create some structure for your internal world, which helps a lot with going forward. Creativity. A lot of times we have to go in there and invoke that part of us that's way deep in there, to have access to it for when we're going to need it in the work environment. Inner strength is another one too. Spending time with yourself to locate that part that has resolve, that has knowing. A lot of times when you hear that part of you that says, look, this is your truth, it just is, it allows you to go, okay, then I will act in accordance with that. And I mean, a really easy one is wisdom. You know,
by the way.
we're all busy being smart, but giving yourself the space and the time to let that part of you come up, you gain access to answers you wouldn't ordinarily be able. They wouldn't just come to the surface otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what we hear in this are activities in which like the hermit is present. And so I've talked so much on the show about the importance of, planning your day, reflecting on your day, taking time out just for thinking, that a third of your time really should be spent on like developing IP and thinking about like how you can get better results for your clients, and like ideation that isn't a part of anything that you're doing for your clients or about content creation, just pure ideation. And this is the energy that I bring when I'm doing this kind of work. So it is like hermit energy. Some of those things that we've talked about, you might do in a collaborative way. You might start your day with a stand-up meeting with your team. But before that, we need to have, I believe, this alone time to go inside and, as you're saying, check in and say, like, I don't know, how do I feel about that? What are my ideas about this? So this is why I feel like this archetype is so essential. And again, when I share this with clients, like they will aggressively like grab onto this as like, oh, this is the thing I need. And I believe it's because we have a dearth of this in our work. We just don't get enough of it. And especially as entrepreneurs, you're probably already overworking. And then so much of our work is for the other clients. And then when it comes time to do work for ourselves, we have to kind of steal that time. On a personal level, when I work with just my friends, I will talk about Hermit Archetype. And one thing that I have noticed, and I had a client who really noticed this, is that for women especially, the business is a whole thing and whole aspect of their lives. But then in their lives, especially if they're moms and wives, like there's always time for the kids because duh. And then there's always time for parenting, co-parenting, because this is a vital part of the relationship. There's time for husband and or spouse time, and then there is time for, as my client taught me, time with her girlfriends or her friends. That women would make time for those other people, probably parents. So you notice that there's all of these entities for whom time is made, but there isn't time for herself necessarily. Now, I hope that a lot of the people who work with me and who listen to me have come further in this, in giving themselves permission to have me time specifically, and to find a place for that. But I noticed that that hasn't necessarily always been the case. And one of the things that I've shared with some of our friends, Christopher, has been when I'm talking to a partner in a relationship and they identify that they have Hermit Archetype, because this will come up because I'll mention mine, I will say, it's really helpful if you can involve your partner in the conversation about Hermit Archetype, because I get to say, hey, I need some me time. I don't need time away from you. What I need is time with myself. And so what's been spectacular in my relationship with Christopher is that because he understands that, it makes me a better version of myself. And so he can say, when are you taking hermit time this weekend? Or what's your plan for hermit time this week? And so our partners can be incredibly supportive when they know how recharged we get from that hermit time.
I would add, by the way, it helped me to realize that I should occasionally volunteer to go away. I mean, for myself probably, but also it shouldn't always be your responsibility to go away or for us to close the door. Sometimes I should give ground. I should let you have this space.
That's super. Now, as someone who doesn't have Hermit Archetype, how do you not have it? What's your relationship to alone time, and how do you see your my Hermit Archetype different from how you are?
Yeah, it's hard to say actually. I think one thing that can be true is you kind of touched on this before, is that there is the balance of extremes. So people whose energy is way out into the world and way in front of people need to balance that by going way back. Not always, but a lot of times there's that. And so I don't have such a forward personality. My energy is not so engaged in the outer world. I think I don't need the extremes. So probably I spend more time kind of in the middle, and a little bit out and a little bit in. And also I would say, I don't have no relationship to Hermit. Probably everybody has some relationship to it. The question is it kind of in your inner circle where it's a need to, or is it a one that's farther out where it's nice to, or you need to recognize hey, once a month or this time period in your life, this is going to be really important.
That's so helpful, because I don't, it's hard to imagine what we're not, and to hear kind of your relationship to it, and how forward I am in the world. Yeah, I do have a very out there personality. One of the funniest things Christopher ever said was the way you knew that I had Hermit Archetype was that no one would know I had Hermit Archetype, because I think people experience me as a big personality and very extroverted, and the fact that when I'm not in public being extroverted and being a big personality, I am zero. There's stillness, quiet. There's me on a path with a dog, and that's it's a lot of alone time, and I'm totally balancing that. That's the thing that I wanted to bring up. How Hermit Archetype shows up. There's a light side and a shadow side, and I kind of wanted to start with the shadow side. It took me years to realize that I needed this amount of alone time. I will begin with telling you my very first consulting engagement that was a nightmare experience for me. I was doing a branding of a project for an event, and it took place on a ship where we all lived during the course of the project. So there was nowhere to go away from the work and the people that I was working with. And it was exhausting, and I really just wanted to go somewhere and close the door. I had a roommate who, thank goodness, I adored, but I just the detox from that particular engagement was insane. So A thing that I did a lot on a similar engagement was naps. So I would be just like, I have to go away from this. And then when I would go to the room where I wasn't alone, I would say, I just need a nap. And so letting me sleep was a thing I think that other people would think, well, the person needs to sleep. Well, like, we get that. So napping, I still think, all of us need to recharge, and some people recharge by napping. And so again, this is really individual. I'm not saying this is necessarily this, but sometimes I think that napping can be a shadow way of stealing hermit time that you need. So I'm bringing that up because before I realized that I just need a lot of alone time, I was a serial napper, like 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon, almost every day napper. And I now like almost never nap, like never, ever, ever. So am I just better rested? No, I think that what I am doing now is I'm taking hermit time and resting and recharging more often because I don't need to steal it. So to me, that's a way that hermit archetype can show up. Yeah. I guess you can just like get in the car and drive away and leave for 3 or 4 weeks. That's another way.
Yeah. I mean, disappearing, avoidance, becoming unavailable, creating blocks, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Shadow can also show up as the opposite. So it can show up as never taking me time, which is more often than what happens.
Yeah.
And then the thing to look for is how that archetype is showing up in shadow in your life. So, for instance, I was talking with somebody recently who has a lot of trouble sleeping. And what she realized was that morning time, before everybody else got up, was so precious to her that she slept with a lot of anxiety, trying to anticipate getting up early so that she could have that time. And when she realized it, that's what empowered her to take that time, to say, this has to be here and I'm going to protect it.
Yeah.
Right? So she's recognizing the thing showing up in the hermit showing up in shadow shows up as lack of sleep. And it's really easy to deprioritize this because it's the internal world, because you're so focused on getting results and what other people need and all the stuff you have to do, and it's very easy to rationalize not taking downtime. But the way I think of it, again, it's very much about opposites. It's about balancing the dark with the light, the darkness, the yin of the interior with the yang of the exterior. And another way to think about it would be somebody who was really into fitness and exercise or bodybuilding. The shadow of that might be they don't take the rest and recuperative time. That's part of the bodybuilding. It's not just doing the work, it's letting your body then adjust to that and make the changes it needs to get the result you want. So it's really recognizing that you have to honor this other side, which it's easy to say, this has no value.
Yeah. A great example of that to me, and then something that I have been doing more of and I encourage my clients to do, is a buffer day after travel, for example. So we just did a retreat with my clients, and the day you come back, you have to take off that day so that you can reintegrate into your life. I also, when I travel for these things where I'm the client, I will actually stay over a day specifically to reflect on what I heard, what I experienced, kind of to, detox is a mean word, but to balance all the people time with some non-people time.
The process.
And yes, to totally process. So I think those are, really good ways. I'm a big believer in the thing that my client is doing and the thing that I do, which is I don't take client meetings on Mondays and Fridays. It'll be a rare exception. And if I end up having to take one, then I'll swap it out for an afternoon. If I have to have a meeting on a Friday for 3 hours, I'm going to take 3 hours on a Thursday and go, to the beach with the dogs or something. So, making sure that you're creating balance in your life, you can hear the ways that it's not optional. And I think we're all, because of the pandemic, we're all more aware of the idea of self-care. And what I'm specifically introducing here is the idea of caring for yourself in this particular way with this kind of alone time. Because self-care can be, family time or friends, whatever you need to do. I want you to also look at ways that you, as Christopher's saying, this kind of like go inward, more yin activities. You wanted to talk about this being a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, well, especially for an entrepreneur, because you are the job. So you are all the jobs, and what I've been able to see from your clients is it's very easy to get into the habit of feeling like work is never done, and so the rationalization of I don't have time for this, I can't be screwing around over here, and you devalue it. It's easy to cut out the. When you were talking, one of the things I was thinking was it requires a lot of discipline to honor this part. You really have to constantly remind yourself this has a lot of value. And so giving yourself that time means having the discipline to say this is equally important as that.
Yeah.
So,
even when you're behind. I mean, this is the thing
Yes.
that I think is especially counterintuitive is I'm behind in my work. I don't have, like, I have a lot to do. I don't have time for rest. Like, the disproportionate effect of an hour of thinking time, walking, hermit time on, you will be more productive than just 1 hour.
Yeah.
You'll be, magnificently more productive if you just take that time. And that has been my experience just over and over.
Yeah, it's we talked before about how it's a way of accessing creativity and answers and reducing things like irritability.
Yeah.
Or and making you more. It helps to make you more efficient, to be a better version of yourself
And make better decisions. Like, there's just, I think if you think of yourself in that kind of overextended way, then and you are looking at like a pile of work that needs to be done, it's just, I don't know, it just makes me feel frazzled thinking about it. Now, if I take an hour, I feel like I don't have an hour to waste on rest or whatever. But when you come back to your work, you'll find 30% of it doesn't actually need to be done. 25% of it got resolved by not you, because while you were away and resting, so-and-so answered their own question or whatever. And then the rest of the things you're able to just boom, 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 go through. So, that, to me, that kind of ability to focus and access your own wisdom. And again, I will just say on the spiritual note, just connecting to that God aspect. If you can connect to God and feel like, oh, okay, I just got my priorities rearranged for myself, suddenly, colors are brighter, sounds are clearer, and my brain is working better. So it's just, to me, it's just one of the huge benefits.
Spiritually, I think it really, again, it takes focus and discipline, but being willing to sit with the stillness, in the silence, and drop in allows you to access a deeper voice, whether you want to call it your soul or your higher self. And that's not going to give you the same answers as your ego. So a lot of times what I'll tell people about that deeper voice is, one of the symptoms is it doesn't always agree with or like the things that you want it to. So if you want to know a deep truth, that's the best way to get to it. In the same way that if you want to get to a really sophisticated, rich answer for a client, it can take letting yourself sink down into the part of you that has access to that information.
Yes, have been there. Awesome. So I want to talk about some practical ways that you can implement, and we have referred to them. When should we call on Hermit?
Well, as I mentioned, it requires discipline. So what I would advise is that you don't wait to call on it, so that you schedule out. And the more you get to know it, the more you'll know how much you need. But that you allocate time up front for it. But the other time I would say is look for your own symptoms. When you start to get grouchy, when you start to get overly confused, when your time is too full, right? That's counterintuitive. You don't feel like, hey, it's time to go away. But that's actually usually a shadow symptom of you've got a lot of clutter building up, and it needs your attention and it needs your time.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I've mentioned the Mondays and Fridays. I have about 90 minutes at the beginning of the day. That's a combination of hermit time, during which I will do freestyle journaling, just brain dump style journaling. I will, if I feel like I'm done, like sometimes I'll need a whole hour for that. Sometimes I feel like I'm done after 15 minutes and I'm ready to jump into my day, and then I'll work on my number one priority.
Brain dump is really good because it's it can feel like, oh, I'm just putting stuff down the paper. I'm never going to read it again. But what you're doing is you're actually clearing out the garbage in a sense, so you can realize, oh, here's the answer.
I love hearing you say that, because that is exactly what happens, and it's a very business thing to realize, is that when the more you do that kind of thing, the more you get stuff out of the way. And if you do happen to look back at it, and this is the thing that I do from time to time, is I will scroll back on those brain dumps and I'll be like, oh, I'm noticing a pattern here. Here's the thing. Here's the source of my anxiety. I'm anxious about this thing because I keep writing about it, or I keep thinking about it. In the afternoon, I think, is another really important thing. There's a reason why cultures have siestas, or people will take a walk after lunch or something like that. And I think going outside and breathing at sometime between lunch and the end of your day is first of all, it's an incredible way to recharge, and it just will help you reset and get perspective before you move on into the afternoon. So that's another a little check-in. You can start with a 5 or 10 minute just little walk outside before you come back in the house. And again, I do this 4 seasons, so it can be like a 20-minute bundle up in the wintertime. But it's incredible to just get that fresh air and get just a little time to be like, okay, here I am. It's me again. I'm returning to myself. And rebalancing, reconnecting with what I want, with what my goal is, what my focus is, and things like that. So, any last words of encouragement?
I would say there is an act of discernment in that alone time about whether you want to do activities or not. So it might involve gardening, it might involve journaling, it might involve prayer, it also might involve not doing anything. So that's a kind of know thyself and feel into when are you giving yourself a distraction and say that it counts as that, or when is this actually helping, like relax your mind and letting you sink in.
That's such a great point. Okay, so the card deck that I use with my clients, that we use to help our clients to identify what their core main archetypes are, and the information about the book by Carolyn Mace called Sacred Contracts, and contact information for Christopher will all be at on my website. You can find it at samanthahartley.com/super. It's where I put all the bonuses from the show now, and I would love for you to go and check that out. And you can always reach out to me anytime and share with me what your archetypes are. I love to hear from other hermits. Ironically, we hermits need to stick together. And with that,
what really stood out to me was I thought people would need persuasion to realize that they were a hermit, and how many of your people raise their hands so quickly. What that really tells me is that it needs validation. Yeah. You gave them permission by bringing it up to say, oh, I recognize that. And then it gives you a chance to say, this is valuable, this is important.
And the hermit is like, I need time to myself. Yes, super. All right. Thank you so much, Christopher. It's been amazing talking to you on this topic, as I love this topic. And with that, we are both wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate if you'd like this episode, and if you enjoyed the show, why not subscribe? Be sure to click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop.